Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. I'm Joanna Hernandez. On the show tonight, 2 private schools say their doors are closing due to the loss of a controversial scholarship program. Why advocates want increased support for bilingual instruction at Chicago public schools.
Everything we do is definitely inspired and, driven by our Mexican roots.
And a taste of some modern Mexican cuisine as Chicago Restaurant Week keeps dishing. And now to some of today's top stories. A group of alderpeople asked Mayor Brandon Johnson to cancel the 60-day limit on shelter stays for asylum seekers. In a letter to the mayor sent today, the council members argue the eviction policy threatens the health and safety of the people who depend on those shelters. While the 60-day limit has been extended twice, Alderman Byron Cicho Lopez says there are currently 8,000 migrants who have gotten eviction notices and do not have alternative housing options. The alderpeople also want better coordination with the state and county, improved shelter conditions, and a permanent housing system for new arrivals and those facing homelessness.
What is our goal now forward? And we ask, and the mayor agrees, is that we need the state, and I hope and ask and I beg the press to please cover the facts. We have $65 million that the state have committed that still are nowhere to be found. We have a limited funding. We have a limited budget, right? $150 million. So we need to see how the state funding is going to come and help us with this resettlement process, right? Because we need an answer for those 8,000 people who receive notices that being already, in some of these cases, over a year in the shelter.
The Chicago Public Schools Board approves a settlement over a carbon monoxide leak. CPS was hit with 2 lawsuits after the 2015 leak at a Jefferson Park school. At least 71 students and 7 adults were sent to the hospital from Crossing Elementary. The Chicago Fire Department found high levels of carbon monoxide in the building. The full board approved the $800,000 payout earlier today. Pizza lovers, listen up. As if you didn't already know, Chicago has some of the best pizza in America. That's according to a recent study by pizza oven maker Paizillo. They analyzed Google reviews from the nation's 500 most populous towns and cities. While Chicago placed near the top, real Chicagoans might balk at being ranked at number 11. New York City, out of all places, took the number 1 spot. Now, I've had a chance to have both. They're both really good, but New York has this really good dollar pizza. Now, up next, debating the end of a controversial state scholarship. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
Two local private schools say they're shutting down because of the end of the state's tax credit scholarship program. San Francis of Rome School in Cicero and Sal Ildo School in Berwyn claim they're on a financial cliff, with more than half of their students on full or partial scholarships. The controversial program, known as Invest in Kids, took donations from people and businesses. It used that money to subsidize student tuition for low-income families at private and trade schools. But the program expired last year. Joining us now with more on what lies ahead are Father Brendan Caron from the Resurrection Project, Eva Villalobos, parent at St. Gall School in Chicago. She is a parent of a tax credit scholarship recipient. Hilario Dominguez, a special education teacher and a Chicago Teachers Union member. And Nayeli Burns, a public school parent in Berwyn. Now, thank you all for joining us. Now, this has been a hot topic. And Father Cron, I want to go to you. What impact is this having on private schools now that the program expired?
Well, it's an alarming piece of news for families across our schools. First of all, I'm proud to be a member of the Resurrection Project, where we provide robust support for students and parents and systems all across our school systems. One of those that's getting a big hit right now is the difficult news, the tragic news of the conclusion of the tax credit scholarship program that has distributed over 40,000 scholarships, largely to Black and brown community, needy families in our community throughout the state.
Eva, I want to go to you. Similar question to you. What are you hearing from San Gal? Do you find yourself in a similar situation now?
They currently are trying to tell us, don't panic, which is kind of hard to do that.
But are you panicking?
Yes, most definitely I am. I have 4 girls. One that unfortunately was just diagnosed with, behavioral and cognitive issues. We got her through adoption, and now tasked with trying to figure out what am I going to do to try to make sure that we can keep our girls there at that school.
That can be challenging.
Most definitely.
Nayeli, I want to go to you. You're in Berwyn, where one of the schools is slated to close. What is your take on this?
As a period of public school, to elementary students, we already struggle with losing a lot of funding in our district. That would be up to $10 million a year. A lot of our students are English learners. That would be like a third of them. 1/5 of them are disability, our special needs programs. So we need that funding to go back to our public schools. And, I just heard the concern of a mother. We have great supports in our public schools, and we need that funding, as students are getting shorted like up to $3,500 a year per pupil. So we need that funding back to the public schools.
Ilario, going to you. CTU has been advocating against this program. How come?
Well, one, I want to say we empathize with your fear. It's never okay to close a school. As we know, 50 schools were shuttered in 2013 by Mayor Rahm Emanuel. So we know very well what it's like to feel the impact of school closures. Now, this program is a voucher program that was started by Bruce Rauner, someone who cheered on the closings of schools. It was started, and really it was part of a bargaining process in order for him to even pass a budget that would fund public schools. So how ironic that in order to fund public schools, he wanted a program that would then take funding away from public schools, and has since then siphoned hundreds of millions of dollars away. Now, it was given a sunset when it started. It since then has given an extension. And so now what we asked for and received was the sunset, was the end of that program, was the end of the siphoning of public funds to private institutions.
And going to you, from what he's saying, what are your thoughts on that? What are the challenges for you when picking what school to enroll your daughter in?
I did try looking into that before I was put in this situation, and unfortunately I did not have the help that I needed, and the only individuals that were able to help me with my situation was a private school. It was sad, that I did not get that helping hand when I was looking for it from other schools in the neighborhood. It unfortunately didn't happen. And, I don't think that, first of all, calling it a voucher is not the right word. It's a tax credit, and it's an optional program that people who want to contribute can do. So it's based on the option of whether a donor wants to go ahead and put those funds, so that other kids with lower income can go ahead and take advantage of these resources to go at a private school. And going into a private school doesn't necessarily mean that it's individuals with high means. It's not. I'm not from there. There's a lot of individuals who have benefited from the scholarships, and it's great to have these options where we have not been able to get the answers and the opportunities at other schools. That maybe you might have gotten them, but at the moment my kids were not able to attain them.
I can tell this is emotional for you.
It is.
Now, I want to bring something up on the screen. Of the students who received 2021 and 22 scholarships to attend private school, about 57% were white, almost 30% Latino, and just under 18% were black. That's according to Chalk Beat Chicago. I want to go to you, Father Cron. Do you believe the program was meeting demographic or intended goals?
I think what we need to recognize is that the program has actually served the majority of the recipients of the tax credit scholarship program have gone to black and brown families. There has been a misrepresentation in data. So let me give you an example. Chicago Jesuit Academy had over 130 students on the tax credit scholarship in the period that the state published, only 10 students were on the register of the state, when in actuality, over 130 students, 100% black students, were recipients of the tax credit
you're
scholarship.
seeing it firsthand.
So we're seeing it firsthand. Epiphany School, 88 students, 100% Hispanic identifying families. The families at St. Francis of Rome School are almost 70% of the student body on the tax credit scholarship. 100% are Hispanic identifying families. All of the recipients are impoverished families according to the scale of the state of Illinois.
Nayeli, what are your thoughts on it, on what Father Karan is saying?
I gotta say that also, you know, part of the demographic is not only focusing on, for example, the Hispanic population, but how many of those are English learners, and in private schools, are they meeting those needs, like as opposed to what we have, for example, in North Berwyn District 98, which all the schools, including middle schools, have dual language programs that can help kids transition, especially newcomers transition into our system as English learners. And we are, you know, for the mother that is so heavy-hearted tonight, you know, we already have systems in place in our public schools that support our special education students. So what that would happen is that we will get even more resources that were funneled away from us to improve these programs.
Well, Eva is saying that she's having a hard time seeing those resources. And Eladia, I want to go to you. People believe that this program brings more options for students and parents, especially those who can't afford the high price of private schools. Shouldn't parents have a choice?
Let's get there. I do want to respond to something that Father Brendan actually didn't speak to, which is the stat that you just laid out. 18% were black students. That's less than 1 in 5. That is not meeting the demographic promise that they gave us in the beginning. And let's talk more about stats and funding, right? Because St. Francis is receiving $60,000 from this voucher. St. Odilo is receiving $130,000 from this voucher. To give you a perspective of salaries, that's 1 teacher for St. Francis, and 2 teachers for St. Odilo. Why is that important? Big Shoulders Fund, an organization that Father Brendan works for, is part of, at least in the network, funds a lot of these schools. I'm sure they also fund St. Gal. They have a general net revenue of $63 million. We said from the get-go, if donors want to donate to these schools, they can. They can do it directly. The scholarships don't have to end. I have a very personal connection to Catholic schools. I actually grew up in St. Pius, the very St. Church that Father Brendan taught in. He was my priest for a very long time.
Do you know each other?
Oh, we know each other very well. My brothers went to Catholic schools.
What would you say would be the compromise here if there's a possibility to invest in kids back?
Well, I do want to get to your question though too, is this. The point I was trying to make is that scholarships have existed for Catholic schools and private schools for a very long time before this voucher program. They can continue to exist. If they want to fund them, they can continue to fund them. There is no compromise in bringing a program like this back, because it siphons away money from public schools that are accountable to the people. Private institutions are not accountable to the people.
So what we need to set the record straight, Hilario, first of all, I so applaud Nayeli, yourself, because Ava, yourselves, we need to multiply more advocates for quality resourcing and education. What you do, I'm always inspired by, will be. Nayeli, being involved in your school system, tremendous. But we need to set the record straight on some myths around here, okay? 104 St. Francis of Rome students are in this school now on the tax credit scholarship program. Elected officials at the state level, senators and representatives, refuse to even vote up or down on whether or not they want to continue that program. Why does that matter? Because it forced the hand of a closure announcement last week at St. Francis of Rome School. Why? Because the total student body is 170 students. The amount of students, 104 on tax credit scholarship. Tax credit scholarships are not vouchers. Voucher is what you have in Wisconsin. You take a check, you hand it to the school of your choice.
Father.
That's not in Illinois.
I'm sorry, Father, we have to go, but thank you for this conversation. There's obviously still more to talk about, and we will. So our thanks to Father Brendan, Curran, Eva, Liva, Villalobos, Hilario Dominguez, and Nayeli Burns. Up next, why advocates want to see more support for bilingual education in CPS. More than 5,000 English learners have enrolled in Chicago public schools over the course of the year, many of whom are the children of migrant families. The influx is shining a spotlight on the shortage of bilingual instructors and services at schools. The Chicago Teachers Union is calling for federal support to help tackle the issue. Joining us now with more are Linda Pereles, an organizer with the Chicago Teachers Union and former special education and bilingual teacher for Chicago Public Schools, and Rebecca Vonderlack Navero, Vice President of Education Policy and Research at the Latino Policy Forum. Thank you both for joining us. I want to go to Linda. How much would you say the influx of new arrival students have impacted schools?
Yeah, I think it's been a huge impact, honestly. We hear constantly from our members that 5,300 newcomers enrolled in the district, and all of the schools are feeling it. We're hearing from our members, right, the need for additional bilingual teachers, additional TAs, resources and curriculum in the students' native language, additional supports for students that are homeless, right? Our district had 17,000 homeless students prior to the arrival of newcomers, and that number has increased even more. And I think the needs that were apparent previous to the arrival of newcomers has been even intensified with the arrival of newcomers.
Which even provides more challenges. Rebecca, yes. How does this impact a student's ability to learn, would you say?
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to stop and say how thankful I am that you're covering this topic. It's so important, and it's such an honor to be with folks on the ground, and it really needs to be an all hands on deck support to make sure these kids can succeed. And I think it's important too, as we dive into this, to really state bilingual education works. We did a collaboration with the University of Chicago Consortium on School of Research. They looked at more than 18,000 kiddos who needed support in developing their English language while supporting their home language. Those kids, when they followed them, went on to outperform the system. So these kids can and will do well, but we need the teachers and we need the resources to support them. And that's going to be critical to support this, support these students and support their future. And I think there's been steps in that direction, but we need federal support. But I also want to point out the state board, Illinois State Board of Education, is really listening to folks on the ground. We know CTU is involved in board hearings and other teachers talking about this issue. Because at the state level, it's gone from 19,000 newcomers to 36,000 over a 2-year period.
Yeah, and not to also mention the shortage of teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you just mentioned that the need increased. Now, Linda, beyond the new arrivals, this has been a longstanding concern of teachers. What have been the challenges finding more bilingual teachers? Can you touch on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there's definitely the need for a pipeline of bilingual educators to reach the classroom, right? Because we are seeing that there is that need. And additionally, like I mentioned, TAs that can support in schools right now where the support is immediate, right? Because to go through that pipeline, to go through a program takes a few years, but we need support in the classroom right in this moment.
So how would that support look like?
Yeah, I think that can look in many different ways, honestly, and I think it looks like, I think like I mentioned, right, it's, for example, if there were TAs right now in the classroom could provide native language support, because right now we are seeing schools that may not have bilingual services and need native language support, right? We are in conversation with CPS about starting a TA pool to send TAs to schools that need these supports.
Yeah. And Rebecca, bilingual instruction only goes up to fifth grade. Why just fifth grade?
So bilingual education can actually be extended if there are sufficient students in that school system. And one thing I wanted to just compliment, the Illinois State Board of Education has proposed $35 million in the state budget for newcomers. It's a line item for this population for the things that she's talking about, bilingual teachers. You can use it for social workers, staff. We know these students, not just academically, there's trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when would you say they would be able to see these services?
So the money is being proposed in the budget. We got to get it through. So if those out here, talk to your legislator so we can vote in support of it. But those dollars would be approved then by the spring. So that would be for next school year if it's approved.
And I think this $35 million is a great start, and we need more because, like I'm mentioning, like teachers are seeing so many needs in the classroom, and they are doing the best that they can with what they have, and they're doing like the most. And we need like the money from the state and the federal government.
And I mean, talking
help.
about that, recently CTU called out for more federal support. Does this go beyond funding, and how would this support help this issue?
The money would help immensely to get these resources, this curriculum, the educators, the TAs into the classroom, the STLS supports that are needed. Right now we're seeing our teachers that are collecting coats, collecting boots, collecting scarves.
So they're doing everything.
They're doing everything, collecting food for families that need it, and this additional monetary support can help. To meet those needs that we're seeing.
Rebecca, you did talk about a little bit right now. What more efforts from the state and city have been made to recruit bilingual teachers?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there's been a lot of efforts towards scholarship money. There's a minority teacher Illinois scholarship. There's a set aside for bilingual. The governor put $45 million into teacher vacancy grants in a lot of districts with high EL populations. I think this specific line item, though, the $35 million, is going to be huge to support these kids.
What would you say would work in the long run?
I think in the long run, we really need to look at creative ways to tap into a pipeline of bilingual teachers. We have wonderful high school students right now on their way to getting the state seal of biliteracy. There's a wonderful mentorship program called Educators Rising. Wouldn't it be great if they tapped into those high school students and got them inspired? There's folks in our communities right now that speak a language other than English, maybe have a bachelor's degree in another area. They can actually get a provisional license and be supported to get a degree. And I think Linda really spoke well about paraprofessionals. We know they're more diverse than our teacher pipeline. What kind of training and support can we give them?
Linda, we only have a couple seconds. What do you
definitely. There are para-mentor programs in a lot of different schools, and those para-mentors can be used as TAs, so we need that support in order to get them into our classrooms.
We can do this. We can help these students succeed.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. Our thanks to Linda Perales and Rebecca Vanderlack Navarro. Up next, a restaurant with a wide variety of food and a nod to family. But first, a look at the weather. Chicago Restaurant Week is dishing out examples of the city's diverse and delicious culinary scene. The 17-day celebration kicked off on January 19th. It invites diners to get out and try new eateries with specialized menus for brunch, lunch, and dinner. We stopped by one participating restaurant, La Josie in the West Loop, that's serving up a modern take on traditional Mexican cuisine.
People expect, Mexican restaurants to be super colorful, and we went more with like a 50s cinema, kind of like shades, and kind of like that, era of, Mexico. La Josie has been here almost 7 years. We're authentic, modern Mexican cuisine. Our menu is inspired by, the majority is going to be central and southern Mexico, so we don't cook only from like one specific region. We like to highlight and take things from other regions. So I think that, when you come here, you have a really good opportunity to really just kind of taste a little bit of everything from Mexico. I decided to name the restaurant after my late aunt, Josefina. She was the first person that gave me my first kitchen job when I was 11 years old, and I was the dishwasher at her restaurant. We make the tamales that she used to make for me for my birthday. Every time it was my birthday and she'd ask me like, hey, what do you want for dinner for your birthday? I'd always request a tamales. So that was something that's part of one of the many dishes that we highlight here that is like very like home and traditional, and you know, it's a really great representation of the restaurant. ¿Qué tienes arriba? El burrito, tienes unas enchiladas. The way that we connect both generations is by cooking and keeping the soul of the recipes and making them taste what they really should taste like. And then all we do is obviously elevate the presentation. And then this way, guests that grew up eating Mexican cuisine, they can still enjoy the flavors, but it's gonna be in a more appealing presentation. But it's all ingredients that we grew up enjoying and that they make sense with the dish. Everything we do is definitely inspired and, you know, driven by our Mexican roots.
I tried the food and it was delicious. I think it was one of my best. The things that I love the most about it is that they have homemade tortillas. Chef's kiss, just saying. Now, Chicago Restaurant Week runs through February 4th. And that's our show tonight. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 7 for the Weekend Review. Now, from all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, I'm Joanna Hernandez. Stay healthy, stay safe. Buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm committed to giving back to the community through law and philanthropy.